Hi guys, welcome to the Asylum. Today we are doing a Kickstarter project episode with GCT's Gordon. Hi Gordon,
Hi guys.
how are you
Hi,
doing tonight?
Gordon.
You alright? So we're here today to talk about Rise of the Kage, a new board game from GCT. It's currently on Kickstarter. All the links you'll need are in the description down below. So, Gordon, would you just want to hit us up with just talk about Rise of the Kage, explain to someone that won't know about it?
Okay, cool. I think I got that. We had a bit of
Tell yourself.
drop off there. Rise of the Kage is a board game, miniatures based, set in the Jewa Isles, which is a universe we created for our skirmish game Bushido. For the guys that know that. And essentially in Rise of the Kage, you take on the roles of Shadowwind Clan, which is a clandestine ninja organization. And you're trying to infiltrate various locations in Ryu, and Ryu is ruled by the Takashi clan currently, so your missions will be to infiltrate their localities, either whether it's the mansions or docks or artisan districts, etc., and fulfill a randomly selected mission, which is a secret mission, so the guard player won't know what that mission is, basically. It's quite a quick game, so you know, an hour to an hour and 15 minutes kind of game time.
Cool. Now, I've looked at a video from the Kickstarter where he was at, it's just gone, Gen Con.
Yeah.
We were just talking about Gen Con and I've already forgotten. Of how the game works, and now it's
Steve?
aspect.
I think Steve's turned into a robot.
Yeah, he's turned into a robot.
There is three ninjas.
The ninja robot.
I'm a going robot here. I apologise.
Yeah, you're all 1980.
Oh dear. I'm a fine now. This is turning out to be a great show.
Yeah, I got 3 ninjas out of that part of the speech path. So
Yeah, there's 3 ninjas.
yes, that's
Great.
correct. Yeah.
Right, we're getting there. If I
Yeah,
talk slower,
you
it might be alright.
You got Katsumi, Shizuka, and Yuto, is that right?
Currently, that's correct. Yeah, there is actually the game's always played with 3 ninjas. So and there's always a ninja selected from each of the 3 houses. So the pretense is that when the guard player there will be more ninjas become available, and obviously depending on how well this Kickstarter does, we will look to increase the number of ninjas, possibly expansions or something like that. But the pretense is there's always 3 ninjas, 1 from each of the houses. So you can potentially play 3 ninja players, 1 guard player. If there's only a 2-player game, you play 1 player will play the 3 ninjas, 1 will play the guard. But there's always 3 ninjas, and the ninjas are always selected after the mission's been assigned. So once you've drawn your mission card out, you can have a look at that and decide which of the available ninjas you've got would be best suited for that style of mission. So, and the missions, like I said, vary from things where you're trying to eliminate someone or trying to steal something or whatever. Different ninjas will be have different values in those skills. So you get the varying play style in what your mission is going to be. Okay.
Is
Yeah.
Steve there, or is he gone? You're there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
It's
Sorry,
almost like a video game in terms of how you can select your characters to their best ability for the mission. And it's almost sort of. It reminds me a bit of possibly my age shows, but Tenchu Stealth Assassins is always a game that springs to mind when I see this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exactly like that, and we would have to say, that's possibly been an influence on us. We all play Tenchu, so it's definitely that style of game. The stealth element is something was quite keen we wanted to introduce. When we decided to develop a board game. ninjas was something cool. It fitted with the Bushido, the Jiwa Isles. So ninjas was just a natural progression for us. And that element, became quite important, keeping the stealth, but also, the element that you have, to a degree, a small element of list building, if you like. And as you said, once you've drawn the mission, you can then select whichever ninjas are going to be best suited for that mission. Those that have the skill set that are going to allow you to accomplish that mission the easiest.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about like all the factions and the ninjas, are you going to think about bringing like the Bushido factions into the game?
That's a definite. It's in the pipeline for this Kickstarter. It was initially tagged the Assault on Ryu. Not quite sure where that tagline went to, but it might still be floating around or something. So the models that were created for this solely were based on the Shadowwind clan assaulting Ryu, so that the Kage clan essentially. But we've played around with ideas, bringing the cult, even the Savage Wave, elements of those into it. So, diversify that crossover as well. Because there's some cool elements we can draw from Bushido, and some of them would be very thematic as well, do you know what I mean? So that's a definite possibility down the line. I would say realistically in this Kickstarter we probably won't see it, but like I said earlier, depending on how well this goes, it will definitely be something we'd look to support and bring out possibly an expansion down the line or whatever that would draw in one of those elements. And I guess there's also, if people buy into Rise of the Kage, there's no reason they can't produce, some of their own kind of house rules to use Bushido models, I guess, if they chose to. There would be nothing stopping them doing that. So.
Are they actually potentially stretch goals in the Kickstarter, or is that too much of a secret?
No, it's not too much of a secret, to be honest with you. I think, as you guys know, this is our first venture into a board game, so it's, we didn't want to be over ambitious on what we could achieve in it. In the same breath, we didn't want to underachieve, we didn't want to shoot short of the mark. So, as I said, we set it in Ryu because we can diversify that quite a lot within the game mechanics, like different bosses, alternate guard styles, more ninjas and all that stuff. And bringing too many, I think, of the other faction from Bushido into it might, would almost create a diluted feel to the game, because then you might only have like, one Ryu boss, one cult boss or whatever the case, with a few minions or whatever, do you know what I mean? And that's not the game style we're trying to create. We wanted the diversity, that we created in Bushido almost to transfer into Rise of the Kage.
Yeah, I was wondering why you was picking on Ryu. Everyone seems to pick on Ryu.
Well,
sorry, go on.
Sorry. Yeah, Ryu is not necessarily all the good guys that you perceive them to be, possibly. Do you know what I mean? So.
Oh, little secret there. Now we've talked about bringing Bushido factions into the Rise of the Kage. Mm-hmm. Is there going to be some sort of profile cards for the ninjas or guards to be brought into Bushido?
The guards are not a definite yet, again, because it's Assault on Ryu, and the Prefecture of Ryu have quite a lot of Ashigaru style models already. They've got some diversity in there already. I'm not saying we won't do it with the guards. The ninjas, for those of you that play Bushido, you'll see they're actually mentioned in the current Bushido rulebook anyway. So the intention was always to bring them out as a Bushido faction regardless. It's just obviously doing Rise of the Kage has allowed us to move that slightly forward. So they will definitely be released with Bushido profile cards. No questions about that. And the play style of them is going to be twofold. One is that they're going to be available as Ronin style models to certain factions. So for argument's sake, the cult might be able to employ, the Ryu might be able to employ certain ninjas depending. But on top of that, the idea is that if we can balance it in gameplay, which is busy getting play tested and that, they will have a coherent, so you'll be able to play them as the Shadowwind clan. You'll be able to draw all the ninjas together, hoping to make it.
Yeah, I was just about to say, would they be coming out as their own faction? Because there's still 4 factions to come out, isn't there?
That's correct, yeah. So
would that be possible just as
there's no intention at the moment to make them an independent faction, per se. But like I said, with the ninjas that come out, they will you'll be able to play them as a sub-faction. So up to 50 points, although you'll be quite restricted with the ninjas that are available. But at the moment, they probably won't get supported beyond that at the moment. That's obviously subject to change. But at the moment, they probably won't be one of the official Bushido factions as such, although you'll be able to play them in Bushido.
All right. Cool. It's good to know.
I just have a question back on to Rise of the Kage itself. Obviously, you've got a 2x2 board, which is beautifully illustrated.
Yeah.
And obviously, like any board game, you get to that case where it's lovely, but you play it so many times, it does, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I also noticed in the I think it's the stretch goals, you've got 2 extra boards.
Yeah.
The docks, and I forget the name, but it's another part.
Artisans District.
That's right.
That's one,
and is it literally, could you have it at a point where those 2 tiles would become a prefix to Rio itself, so you can battle through there to get to Rio, or are they separate standalone boards
they
themselves?
separate standalone. Each board within, so if you're playing like the mansion, for example, the stately home, you'll have a set number of missions that will be generic missions, and then there'll be 3 missions that will be specific for that board, so they'll be associated with that board. Same as if you play in the docks, there'll be 3 missions, plus you'll have the generic missions, again, that get shuffled in the deck when you join. We looked at not combining the 2 boards, but early on we dismissed the idea of a modular board just because it became very difficult to balance gameplay. You always got situations where, if the board was set in certain ways, it always favoured one or the other too heavily. And any game, there's always going to be certain elements when you're playing in a variety in it that, this mission might favour the ninjas, this mission might favour the god, but it was too skewed one way. So quite early on in game development, it was decided to do away with the modular element and concentrate more on a fixed board, but that would give better gameplay, essentially is what we came down to.
Right.
So I'm not saying we can't, because quite a few people have asked whether we could build some sort of campaign element. So again, it's quite difficult when you're doing the Kickstarter, because obviously Rise of the Kage isn't a game we're still developing. I mean, it's almost set in stone. There's a few tweaks to do and stuff like that. People bring a lot of cool ideas into the mix, and it's like, well, we didn't think of that either, but that would be really cool. But then it's to try integrate that into a rule set that has already been established and tested, makes it quite difficult, because you obviously don't know what tangent, introducing that rule will lead on to different rules or whatever the case may be. So it's quite difficult. Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of a campaign mode, where you could infiltrate the docks, for argument's sake, and work your way up to through the town to the mansion or whatever. I think something like that could be quite easy to introduce, because it wouldn't necessarily impact, directly the boards being next to one another or whatever the case may be. Yeah. So.
But like you said, you could make your own house rules up and do that as well.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, precisely.
Yeah. But it would be a cool idea.
No, exactly. So. There's been some phenomenal ideas, that people have commented both openly on the Kickstarter and have obviously emailed us, privately, and that, suggesting cool ideas. And it's like anything, if and when there was another print run of this game done, some of those ideas might be incorporated and taken in. For those of you that know Bushido, we did the same thing when we released Bushido. We released it as an open format game, so anyone could download it and play. We ran it like that for 18 months or whatever. It took all the feedback that everyone gave us, good and bad, and we kind of mold Bushido to fit, so that people were happy with what they were playing, and we ironed out all the tweaks and things like that. So there's no reason that model couldn't be moved on to Rise of the Kage. If a reprint was done, we could add little bits in that would add to the thematics of the gaming, for sure.
So yeah, we've got a few people watching today, so thank you for tuning in. We've got Mr. David Smith,
cool.
who said, I'll catch this later, but ironically is at the club playing Bushido. And then we've got another gentleman who's got a question. It's actually 2 questions, I think, in one, by Ben Turner. I'd be keen to know the balance of luck and strategy here, e.g. can they strategize away all bad dice rolls, or are they going to be make or break dice rolls that decide key events?
That's quite a good question. I quite like that. Again, I refer back to the game is obviously there's dice involved, so there's always an element of luck. You know what I mean? But it is a strategy-based game. So if you're the best general on the day, there's a good chance you will win if you roll an average of dice. Obviously, if you roll all ones through your whole game, in reality, I think it doesn't matter how good you are. You can mitigate those with your strategies, but I think in fairness, you know, in any miniatures game, or any game for that matter that's involved dice, if the dice gods don't favour you, you know, it's going to be an uphill struggle. So I think it's a good balance between luck and strategy, for sure.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
So that were it for questions at the moment from the
Now,
audience.
on the subject of dice, in Bushido it's very unique. So yeah.
Yeah.
Bushido has a very unique dice set, like rule.
Yeah.
With like the attack and defense. Would we be seeing that in the Rise of the Kage?
Okay, Rise of the Kage does use alternate dice, but for slightly different method. In Rise of the Kage, you do have a dice pool, but it is split into a combat pool and a stealth pool. Now, ultimately in the game, which I probably should have explained earlier on, for those that haven't watched the video, the guard player can win in multiple ways. And the best way, obviously, for him to win is just to stop the ninjas winning. Because if the ninjas don't win, the guard player wins by default. And there's a few ways he can do that. And one is obviously by raising the alert level. And that's how aware the guards are that they're under attack. If they raise that to a sufficient level, then they raise the full alarm. You know, the town watch is summoned and the ninjas lose the game. Now, the dice pool works in that when the ninjas want to perform actions, they can always choose to do an action noisily, but that will obviously increase the alert level of the guards in the mansion or whichever location they're playing at. So they have a dice pool of combat and a dice pool of stealth. Now, whenever they want to do something quietly, they need to use a stealth dice to do it. If they want to do it noisily, in some cases they might have to because they have no stealth dice, they would use a combat dice. So although they have two dice, it's not not the bluffing mechanic that you use in Bushido, for argument's sake. So, and again, back into ninja skills, you know, some of those ninjas will have a higher pool of dice in stealth than combat, and obviously vice versa.
Cool. Now you have brought out another stretch goal for dice, which looked pretty cool. Just thought I'd get that in there.
Yeah.
Now there is a lot of talk or questions regarding to, like, we know it is 2 to 4 players, but would be like AI rules, so just one person could play?
That's we are kind of thinking about it. I think unfortunately at the moment, you know, the way the mechanics of the game works, it wouldn't favour an AI influence. Because you know, the entire way the mechanics written wouldn't favour it. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't. We could look at ways that we could alter the rules ever so slightly to allow that. But again, it's, you know, within the period that we have running the Kickstarter, to create an AI deck like that would mean, firstly, it wouldn't get tested very accurately, you know what I mean? And then again, it would be putting out a product that we're not happy with, you know. And, you know, unfortunately, as most of you all know, you know, Wargamers are quite, you know, passionate about what they're doing. It's a costly endeavor, to whether you war game, board game, or whatever. You know what I mean? We don't want to be putting something out just for the sake of putting it out, and, you know, it's a one-play wonder and no one wants to play the game after that. You know, it's not good for their investment, you know, and it's not good for us as a company, obviously, because it, you know, it's going to be, oh yeah, they put that game out, it was rubbish. I tried it once and it was absolutely rubbish. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, I mean, for that point of view, we're quite reluctant to try to rush something out to appease people. It is a fantastic idea, don't get me wrong, but I think it would need more time than the current Kickstarter has available in order to, you know, to develop those ideas into something that was, you know, was really playable and fair, or even not fair, but even enjoyable. So.
Yeah, but you could always, like, I'm not sure if you're thinking of building another expansion, which probably would be my next question, but yeah, you could always bring it in later on, like you have waves for Bushido.
No, no, definitely, exactly, and that's a hark back to something we said earlier. There'll always be intention that we will support this game regardless, you know what I mean? So whether that would be extra maps or extra bosses or extra missions, as you just suggested there, an AI deck to control the guards, stuff, all those kind of ideas, bringing other races and stuff into it, or all those kind of things that are definitely on the cards, do you know what I mean? And it's, like you say, something we could do later down the line. But
another question also, the miniatures, are they plastic or are they resin based?
It's still not 100% decided, to be perfectly honest. We've gone with all the manufacturers that have spoken to us have said that it will be foolish to decide a plastic until you've done test pieces. Now, we're not a big company. We can't afford the tooling costs that come with doing plastic tooling. Hence why we've come to Kickstarter to fund this. So I know it's a reoccurring question. There will definitely be plastic. I'm almost certain of that. Probably a hard plastic, just that's almost certainly what it will go with. But we don't want to really commit to something until the manufacturers have told us that that's the best material to use. Now we have to go. Like I said, we've never produced plastic miniatures before, so we have to go by what the professionals are advising us. As part of the deals, though, is that we will always get samples that we obviously need to approve. And anyone that knows the Bushido models, we're quite passionate. We're miniatures gamers. We like, the aesthetics of a miniature. So we're obviously going to get them the best that we possibly can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
It's one thing that on the Kickstarters, there's always like you buy the Kickstarter, and then later on it's like add £25 to get your models in resin or metal or whichever. It's always something that's there, but I've seen in past Kickstarters.
Yeah. I mean, we do have the metal add-ons, which people, if they want, can do. There's always a big debate about pewter and resin, about the qualities of pewter and resin models. You speak to pewter casters, they'll tell you they're as good as resins. You speak to resin casters, they're not. I think from a high-level painting element, I definitely have to favour resin models, just purely, a smoother, flat surface over pewter models. But for gaming models, and I think generally speaking, people that paint to even a relatively high standard, it's quite difficult to tell the difference between pewter. I mean, we've got quite a reputable caster who casts for us. And people that don't know the Bushido models, generally when they see them at shows, the first assumption is that they are all resin models anyway. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I mean they look amazing. The detail on them is incredible. So especially the ninja models, they look amazing.
Yeah, it's also just as a point of reference is we kind of delved in. Those are also digital sculpts, just for reference, but which we've just started toying, playing around, getting guys to do digital sculpting and stuff, which I think, as you say, with those ninjas, they've come out fantastic. Give us a lot more creative input into the sculpting process as well, as opposed to conventional sculpting.
Sorry, I see from the lucky people that sort of went for the higher Kickstarter level, they get the model of the princess, obviously, that's captured.
Yeah.
And which is a nice addition, sort of that extra gold piece.
Sorry, you broke up at the end there.
Oh, did I terribly sorry? No, it's just I said about the princess models, a nice addition. Something, quite often you get these extra golds and things, and they are just, well done, you've done it. But you actually have something there to try and get to rescue, and it was just nicer for the people.
No, definitely. It's going to be quite a cool model as well, I think. I hope, once it's digi-sculpted, that's already out to be sculpted. So I'm hoping we'll have an update pretty soon, which is another advantage of digital sculpting, is that we can get a lot more work in progress shots that we can hopefully show people as well, and see what they fund in, essentially, which is quite important, and to keep that community engaged, essentially. Like I said, without their backing, the game just wouldn't be a possibility at the moment. So.
Now, speaking of models, no, go on.
No, sorry, it's just something else I remembered from watching the video. It's obviously you're saying the game lasts to 1 to 1.25 hours, but one of the goals for the guards was if they could stop the ninjas until sunrise.
Yep.
Obviously they'd won. How does that sort of work within the game mechanic? How do you decipher that time?
There is a turn counter, so every time it's the guards have their action phase, they move the turn counter up by 1. So there's always 12 turns, so after 12 turns the game's in regardless. That's sunrise. If the ninjas haven't facilitated their mission by that point, then they lose by default. Now the ninjas, certain missions are harder than others to fulfill, so when they draw the mission card, there is a difficulty number on the mission card which states how difficult that mission is, and when they infiltrate into the mansion or the location or whatever, they need to gain certain markers which they accumulate into a pool, and when they've reached the required difficulty of the mission, that's an indicator that they're then on the brink of succeeding on that mission. The mission gets revealed, and then obviously they have to fulfill whatever that mission is. So, for argument's sake, if they're assassinating a lord or a visiting dignitary or whatever that model or that marker will be placed on board, and then they'd have to kill him and escape off the board. And every time the ninjas have had their actions, the guard has a turn to react to them, in which case then the turn tracker will count up every turn until sunrise, and as sunrise comes they get found out basically.
The ninjas always go first, so the ninjas will turn first, then the guards.
That's correct, yeah. The ninjas always have the first turn of the game, so it's also, for added thematics, is the guard always sets up first, so he deploys his guards, and depending on the boss, he'll have a X number of starting guards, depending on which boss it is, and he gets to deploy those in the mansion or the location before the ninjas then see where they want to infiltrate the mansion from. After they've seen what their mission is and chosen their ninjas, they can then formulate their plan based on where the guards are, etc. What's going to be easiest for them to do it.
Yeah, so how do you balance the game with points if there's only 3 ninjas and an army of guards?
Okay, it isn't such a essential point balancing. It's balanced on the term that the guards can't react to the ninjas unless they know the ninjas are there. Now, that might sound a bit weird, but it plays out quite well. So essentially the guards start the game in an unalerted state, which means they can't make physical attacks against the ninjas, for argument's sake, until they've detected them. And the ninjas likewise start in an undetected state, and so once the guards have located them, they become detected. So the guard has a very limited number of actions that he can use, and the actions he has available are dictated by how alert the mansion is. So as the ninjas make more noise, the guard gets more and more action points to use. So if they make lots of noise in a turn, the guard's going to be very responsive. So he'll have all these extra actions to spend on his guards. If they sneak around very stealthily, don't make any noise or whatever, he's going to have a very limited number of actions, which means it's very difficult for him to impede on what the ninja's doing. Obviously, it's also balanced in the fact that the guards don't know what they're trying to do. So in some missions, the ninja might just need to find one thing and escape or kill someone, which means the guard doesn't know that, which means he really has to defend the entire mansion or make it as difficult as possible for the ninjas as possible, purely from that point of view, which means it's not balanced in the terms of pointing, because the guard has an infinite number of guards. So the ninja is free to kill as many guards as he chooses. It's going to make noise, it's going to increase the alertness of the mansion. But the guard also has a barracks, which are essentially spawning points in Rise of the Kage. So he can utilize those action points if he chooses. Instead of being responsive, he can wake some more guards up that assumed to be sleeping in the barracks or whatever. And as the alert level increases, he'll be able to recruit better and better guards. So the lazy guards or the novice guards, they on duty at night. It's midnight. They start hearing things going on. Then they go wake up the veterans and say, hey, Gunso, what's, something's going on, and they get better, and then the retainers come up as the alert level gets to a sufficient stage. And this will also be dictated by the boss. So whichever boss the guard player has chosen to dictate will dictate kind of what guards he has access to and when these different levels change.
See, that's cool. So then it's not going to be the same game, like, as it were, because if you have a different boss, or it depends on the cards that you draw, it's then again a different game in itself.
Yeah, exactly. There's a standard guard deck, so there's a deck of cards that the guard draws from every turn, and those allow him to do, unique things or whatever, and every boss comes with their own mini deck, which is 16 cards that get shuffled into the main guard deck. So each boss will also bring their own unique play style, like you said, into it. So that those cards will be unique to that specific boss.
That's pretty cool.
So what are we talking about a movement phase each turn? I mean, how much min and max can the ninjas move and the guard move, so on?
Well, the guards are restricted again by the alertness of the mansion itself. So, as an example, in the guard stage, Kenta, for argument's sake, the guard boss that's currently available, he has 6 action points in a turn when it's his move turn. Now, he only has 6 action points, so he can choose to use those to move guards around. If he chose, if there was a detected ninja, he could use those to attack the ninja. He can use them to attempt to detect ninjas if they're within the area of influence of the guards, for argument's sake. But once those 6 actions are up, he can get. Now that's further restricted by the different guard types. You can only spend a certain number of actions on. So again, the novice guard you can only spend 2 actions on. So I could move a guard. He'd move his move stat. Most of the guards move 2 squares. I could move him again. So in a turn, he could move 4 squares, for argument's sake.
Hello?
I thought it was just the internet playing up.
I thought I crashed.
No, I thought I
crashed. Oh.
No, we've lost Gordon.
We've lost Mr. Gordon. He's been assassinated by the 3 ninjas of Chenchu.
No.
He might come back in a second.
Yeah. So yeah, guys. While you're both here, do you want to tell me a little bit about the basic mechanic, like what you were just talking about with the dice? Because obviously I'm a little bit unsure.
Yeah, more cleared up than I am. I'm just winging.
Yeah. In Bushido, you have 2 dice.
Yeah.
Different colours, so you attack or defense. Yeah. So attack or defense. So if I was attacking you, I'd have a dice stat, and you have a dice stat, and then it just alters from there, and then that's how it works, rather than having a table.
What? So is it how many numbers I roll on there more than you?
Yeah. So
add all the dice together.
Yeah. So a samurai would have 4 dice
to attack.
Yeah.
So that's the elite guard would have more dice in the case of someone.
So obviously that goes down if he's in combat or he's exhausted or something like that. So makes it a bit fairer. And I could be attacking you, which would have just a standard 3 dice guy. So obviously I could put all 4 dice into attack, and you could put all 3 dice into defense.
Oh, so you have the option when you're in combat to do either.
Yeah. So you could completely surprise me and then just throw all attack in. So if I had 1 wound left and you had it's all.
Yeah. And then just obviously if it's 3d6, I just add all the dice together, and if I win, I win.
No.
Oh. I thought it sounded too easy.
Yeah.
No, he's gone. He's coming off and going on.
He's just gone, so hopefully he might come back.
This is why I want to know about the movement phase, because obviously board games are primarily dice to move, aren't you? The old-fashioned. I mean, no, this is predetermined movement with combat dice. It's an element of board game with board game.
So I just thought it was my internet crashing then.
Oh, I did as well. I will move
crashing a bit.
So while we've got this opportunity, guys, people that are watching, do you want to pop your questions in the comment section down below? Hopefully Gordon will come back to answer them.
Should I check the comments? I'll check the comments. As the Bushido expert, I'll answer them all. So the comments are exactly the same. We're getting 2 more watches there, so.
We've got 4 watches.
So how many factions are in current Bushido?
5.
5 factions.
And there's 4 to come out.
How long about so they're going to be back?
No.
Oh. Hello.
Hey, I've returned it. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
I don't know what happened there. I just suddenly black screen. So yeah.
Well, I thought it was my internet crash. Well, we all thought it was our
Yeah, we
internet
all thought,
crashing.
yeah.
Right,
Well,
so
So
we were on the guard movement phase, weren't we? I think with the guard boss.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, so the guards, like I said, are limited by the number of actions that they can use on each individual guard, and the guard player himself is limited by the number of actions he has, depending on the alert state of the location. On top of that, when the ninjas choose to do, if they choose to do stuff non-stealthily, so they, break doors down instead of, picking the locks for argument's sake, or whatever the case, or saber rattle and destroy the guards, they give the guard player in his following turn additional actions, which then allows the guard to be responsive to what the ninjas are doing. So, the noisier they are, the more responsive the guard player is essentially to the ninja attacker. And likewise in the ninja turn, they plan out the route they're intending to take. They generally move 6 squares in a turn. So they lay out the route they're choosing to take, all 3 ninjas. There's initiative roll then to determine which order they will activate in. And their actions are dictated by the number of dice they have. So if they've still got dice left, they can do an action, for example, a combat action or a stealth action or whatever the case will be, as long as they've got dice left in their pool, and that pool gets replenished every turn. Now, in the event that the ninjas are detected and they have to fight the guards, if they sustain wounds, their dice pool gets decreased every time they sustain a wound. And when they've got no more dice pool left, that's when they eliminate it from the game, the ninjas.
I was just about to say, because I saw that on the video that you did with that interview. I thought that was quite a cool idea, because obviously they're not going to be as effective wounded, are they?
Yeah, precisely.
So that's quite cool. So getting back to the miniatures kind of thing, would you be thinking of putting in a stretch goal or like an add-on from like the pledge manager for to receive your army painted, like the whole box set painted?
It's quite a good question. It's not something we considered initially, to be honest with you, but we have had quite a couple of requests for it via email and stuff like that to potentially put it on. So it's looking at, obviously, firstly sourcing someone that's willing to paint the whole box set, and what cost implications are involved in offering that. Even if it was offered, it would have to be a very limited perk, because that, I'm not quite sure, but I think on the pledge level is it 72, 74 miniatures at the moment or something like that. Yeah. So quite a lot of miniatures to paint off, and we're hoping, obviously, as we move forward, that will increase as well. So it would be quite a lot of miniatures to paint. I wouldn't say no, but at the moment it's not something we actively considering, to be honest.
I don't think I've painted 72 miniatures in my entire life. Never mind, someone's going to sit there and paint a whole box set. I know a few guys that do that though.
Yeah.
Miniature maniacs, you're good at that.
I think I've got a bit too much on my painting table at the minute. I think that's why I'm more interested than everyone else.
You'll be one of those guys that wants it painted.
Yeah. Ian will tell you how much I've got to do.
Yeah, he's got a lot to do. Yeah, we've got a backlog.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want their miniatures painted nowadays. For people like me, it's nice to have them in their sort of colours they come in, but to have them painted like they're on the box is, it's pretty good. It actually looks like it's meant to, as opposed to me that looks like a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Was there any idea to maybe make 3D scenery within the game more, or is it just always going to be primarily, how it's presented?
No. Again, it's like anything, as a small company, there's obviously a cost involved, and producing anything at low volume counts is always expensive, regardless of what it is you're trying to produce. Looking back at Bushido, for argument's sake, tokens, for argument's sake, is something I feel personally Bushido lacks, but it's the cost involved in producing token sets that fulfill their function, but not only that, make it affordable to someone purchasing it. And that's always where the barrier is. If we could produce 100,000 copies, then there wouldn't be a problem. But obviously that's unrealistic, and that kind of transfers into the board game as well. I mean, there's a lot we'd love to do. 3D, terrain being a perfect idea. If you see like Colin at Battle Systems, fantastic 3D card terrain. You know what I mean? Absolutely beautiful stuff. But to produce something, of equal quality or similar standing, it, would just be cost prohibitive for us at the moment, I think. But again, down the line, as we support the game as it moves forward, there's no reason that couldn't become a reality, definitely. So.
I guess it would change the game mechanics as well, unfortunately. Height, differences and things. You have to implement new sort of strategies and ways of combat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So, I think the key element as well, we've got to be careful, which, is that at the end of the day, it is intended to be a board game, and the more you introduce in terms of 3D elements and stuff like that, you start veering more away from that element, back to a miniatures game. You know what I mean? And I think we've I feel, and there's quite a few games out there like this, in the same kind of field at the moment. It's a good balance between the two. You know what I mean? Between a true board game style and a miniatures game, and it's a nice middle ground between the two. And I guess the more 3D elements you introduce into it, it starts pulling it closer and closer towards being just a true miniatures game again, which is obviously at the moment Bushido is our focus for that element, and hopefully this board game will fill a slightly different role within that.
See, that's just made me think of a question. Obviously you've got the Bushido where it is a tabletop game and Rise of the Kage, which is a board game. Would you be thinking of integrating Rise of the Kage into like a tabletop game? Would there be mechanics for that to work where you could just use like your tape measure and?
That's quite a good question. No, it is a good question. The thing is as game developers, you've always got cool ideas, and I think the bigger problem than having cool ideas is obviously getting ideas that work, that are fun, but also that you can work within the constraints of that mechanic you've made. You know what I mean? And it becomes quite a grey area, because every idea you come up with you think is cool, obviously, because it's your idea. Do you know what I mean? But in practice, that's not always the case. Do you know what I mean? So we're open to explore any idea, but I think anyone that's given their hand at developing a game, you'll see quite early on, what's going to work and what's not, and then there's no point in like kind of flogging a dead horse if the idea doesn't really hold water. I mean, sometimes your first approach it might not work, and you come back to it. I mean, Rise of the Kage for us, for example, isn't a new venture. It's something we've been toying around with in terms of mechanics and rules and that, for a good couple of years. So it's we explored ideas, came back, looked at it, came back, and finally got to something we were quite happy with. So at the moment there isn't that idea, but it is, who knows, down the line it might be something we look at, to have that a bigger crossover even. It is convenient as well, obviously, that it's a 2x2 board, which happens to be the size Bushido's played on as well. But that's just pure coincidence, by the way.
Well, in a way, you've already introduced that by making some of the ninjas Ronin models.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is potential, isn't there?
Sure.
We've got a question from Mac Adams 001. Is a line of sight mechanic, or is it just an area of influence thing?
The ninjas have no line of sight. So any square they can draw a line to from the square they're in is in their line of sight. That's 360 degrees. Obviously, they can't draw it through walls or doors. The guards, on the other hand, have two variant states. So they have an area of influence, which is essentially the number of squares around them that they have any influence on. So, for argument's sake, if the ninja wants to sneak past the guard and he goes through his area of influence, then he would have to do a stealth test in order to succeed in doing that. Now, the guards have a facing because their area of influence changes depending on what state they're in. So if they're in an undetected state, their area of influence is generally smaller and only extends to the sides and the front of them. So you can quite easily sneak up behind them and go at them, or whatever you choose to do, or sneak past them unimpeded. If they're alerted, so you've made noise, or they've come, they suspect there's something untoward going on, they become alerted, in which case their area of influence generally increases then, and they also becomes 360 degrees around them. So it's harder to sneak up on an alerted guard, for argument's sake, than it is on a unalerted guard. So in answer, the ninjas don't per se have a line of sight, and the guards have a facing, but their line of sight is essentially, again, any squares that they can draw a line to from the square they're in.
Cool. Well, that answers that question. All right. Another question from Mac Adams. How does a ninja go from being discovered to undiscovered again?
Okay, the ninjas have a unique action, which is obviously only available to ninja, which is called fade into the shadows. So now it's a risk element involved, not in becoming undetected. So if he's been detected, his stat line changes for 1. So it's easier for the guards then to interact with him and stuff. So if he wants to lose that state, he wants to become hidden again, he forfeits his turn. Now, and he can fade into the shadows. Now, there's 1 or 2 restrictions that obviously can't be in the area of influence of a guard, for 1. And now, that sounds at face value quite easy to do and simple for the guard, but bearing in mind, giving up his actions for that turn means that he does nothing in the turn, which means obviously as the clock ticks down, it's a gamble, it's a way up whether he feels it's worth the benefits from being concealed again, or if the time's going to run out prior to that. But in a simple answer, he can forfeit his turn and he can fade into the shadows as long as he's not in area of influence of a guard or in a light emitting source, so a lantern for argument's sake. He can just fade into the shadows and revert his state back to concealed.
Cool. Sorry, my dog's just come into the room. I was wondering what was going on. Well, that, I think, answers all the questions that people have. And have any of you two got any more questions you'd like to ask?
No, I think I'm pretty much there on a lot of things I've wanted. I mean, obviously, the guard boss itself, I mean, I guess he can be killed, can he? I guess he's a bit of a hard...
Yeah, he can. Again, the guard boss in its same, he might not always be in play. So there are certain cards within the deck that will bring the guard boss in. There's certain events. So as the alert level moves up, there will be a point where every boss will automatically come into play because he's aroused. It's like something. The sergeants have come and said, hey, something's going on in the mansion. So that will be different for each boss. And some of the bosses will start play. Now they so they become almost like the elite of the guards essentially on those lines. So there's varying elements of when the boss player as a model himself will be in play or not.
And obviously, I guess with the cards themselves as well, you've got the caltrops, which I guess sort of take the cards out noisily, and then you've got the poison rice, which you could then stealthily take them out. I guess that's your 2 variants on.
Yeah, exactly. There's always an option. The ninjas, every time they search an area looking for their mission, they draw a card from the ninja deck, which sometimes will be a cool thing. Most of the time will be cool. So it will either be a bonus for them, or it will be some piece of equipment or something they've found which will assist them. But not, there are 1 or 2 bad cards within the ninja deck, which means they've stumbled across a guard or alerted a guard or whatever the case may be. So there's a little bit of risk involved in drawing the card. It's not an option thing, so they always draw that card when they search a location for it.
Is there actually any, also just thinking about it, is there any parts on the board that are sort of traps in themselves that they can pull upon?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the whole pretense on the game, like I said, is the ninjas move through the mansion, searching the locations, trying to locate what the person they're trying to kill, or the item they're trying to steal, or the piece of information they're trying to gather, or whatever the case may be. And they do that by moving to the search locations, and these are placed by the guard player, during the setup. Now there is a number of these markers dictated by the board. So if you're playing in the mansion, for argument's sake, then there's 18 of those. Now 2 of those will always be traps. And if you're playing in the artisan district, for argument's sake, there will be 16 of them, and 4 of them will always be traps. So the ninja player doesn't know if that's an actual location they're searching or if it's one of the traps. The boss player also has cards he can draw, which he can then assign as any one marker as traps and those kind of things as well. So yes, there are traps.
Interesting. Now, because Spud's here, Spud loves secrets.
Yeah. I'm the secret hoarder of doom. Are we allowed to release any secrets?
Is there anything kind of to get at. Is there any kind of upcoming stretch goals that you could slightly give away to get people more excited? Exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think stretch goals. Ultimately, obviously, the new Doc Master's coming out. He will get hopefully some of his own cronies, so his God guys that will come out, which will hopefully create a whole little mini expansion. So it'll be the third board, which I think is already up on the Kickstarter. I'm not sure, and some additional guards, retainers. And depending how far we go, potentially even another boss save, which will. Robot again.
Well, thank you. Oh, someone talking? Nope, just me. Well, thanks, Gordon, for joining us.
No, thanks a ton for having us on, guys. Yeah, I really appreciate the support you've given us in that. So,
yeah,
both for this and obviously the support you give us in Bushido, and that's really appreciated.
Well, I'd like to say congratulations because obviously your Kickstarter's gone really well, and you've passed. You've got like 630 backers. You've gone well over £50,000, and you've got 18 days to go, guys. So if you've not already backed this Kickstarter, the link is in the description down below. And if you've not, I want to know why. And if you have, I'll send you a cookie.
And as an added bonus, I'll put it on my Facebook and everything as well and share it out for everybody.
And Spo's going to share it as well.
Cool. Yeah. Lovely. Thanks, guys, and thanks again for having me on there.
No problem. So I'd like to thank Gordon for coming on, Maniac Ian, who's made this first appearance, so welcome, and Spud as a guest host for helping me out because someone had to drop out.
Yes.
Yeah. Alright, well thanks a lot guys, and I'll see you again very soon.